The hedgerows of Normandy were still wet with the night's dew when the first German Panther engines began to rumble awake. It was early morning, June 13th, 1944. The sky above the French countryside was pale and quiet, the kind of calm that soldiers learn not to trust. In a narrow country road near the small village of Villers-Bocage, the war had paused for a moment. British tanks were moving forward cautiously, unaware that German armor was already waiting nearby. Somewhere behind the hedgerows, hidden from view, a single British Sherman Firefly was also waiting. And within the next few minutes, that lone tank would do something almost no one believed possible.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.
At this stage of the war, German Panther tanks had a reputation that spread fear across the battlefield. With their thick-sloped armor and powerful 75mm high-velocity guns, they could destroy Allied tanks from long distances. British and American crews knew the danger well. The standard Sherman tank struggled against Panthers and Tigers. Its gun often failed to penetrate German armor unless the range was close or the angle was perfect. Many Allied tank crews had already learned the hard way that facing a Panther head-on could mean instant destruction. German tank crews believed the same thing. In Normandy, many of them felt confident. Their Panthers dominated open ground. Their guns were accurate, their armor strong. Against ordinary Shermans, they usually held the advantage. But on that June morning, something unusual was about to happen. Only 1 week earlier, on June 6, 1944, Allied forces had landed on the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in history. British, American, and Canadian troops had fought their way inland from places like Gold Beach, Juno Beach, and Omaha Beach. By the second week of June, the fighting had moved away from the coast and into the tight countryside of northern France. This land looked peaceful from the air, but for tank crews it was a nightmare. Fields were small, roads were narrow. Thick hedgerows divided every piece of land like walls. These hedgerows were not simple bushes. Over centuries, farmers had built them up with layers of earth, stones, and tangled roots. Many were over 2 meters high and strong enough to stop a tank. From inside a vehicle, a crew could see almost nothing beyond the next field. Every turn in the road felt like walking into the unknown. Infantry could hide inside the vegetation, anti-tank guns could wait behind the banks, and enemy tanks could appear suddenly at very close range. Inside one of those hedgerow lanes sat a Sherman Firefly belonging to the British 4th County of London Yeomanry. The Firefly looked almost identical to a normal Sherman, but it carried one crucial difference. Instead of the usual American 75mm gun, the Firefly mounted the powerful British 17-pounder anti-tank gun. This weapon had been designed specifically to destroy heavy German armor. Its barrel was long, thin, and deadly accurate. The man commanding that tank was Sergeant Gordon Hill. Like many tank commanders in Normandy, Hill had already seen enough combat to know how quickly things could go wrong. Inside the turret with him were 4 other crewmen. The gunner, Trooper Joe Ekins, was responsible for aiming the massive 17-pounder. The loader worked quickly beside him, ready to feed armor-piercing rounds into the breech. The driver and co-driver waited in front, listening to the engine and the radio, watching the narrow road ahead. For the moment, the tank remained hidden behind the hedgerow. The crew could hear distant engine noise echoing across the fields. German armor was moving nearby. Only hours earlier, British forces had pushed into Villers-Bocage as part of an attempt to break through German defenses. The move had surprised some German units in the area, but experienced German commanders reacted quickly. Among them was one of the most famous tank officers of the war, SS Hauptsturmführer Michael Wittmann of the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion. Wittmann was already a legend within the German armored forces. He had commanded Tiger tanks on the Eastern Front and had destroyed dozens of enemy vehicles. His reputation was built on aggressive attacks and precise gunnery. On the morning of June 13th, Wittmann saw an opportunity. British armored columns were stretched along the road near Villers-Bocage. Some tanks were parked, others moving slowly. The situation looked vulnerable. Without waiting for a full coordinated attack, Wittmann ordered his Tiger tank forward. What happened next would become one of the most famous armored engagements of the war. As Wittmann's Tiger rolled into Villers-Bocage, it opened fire at close range. British tanks and armored vehicles were caught by surprise. Within minutes, several Shermans and half-tracks were burning along the road. The powerful 88mm gun of the Tiger tore through vehicles one after another. British crews scrambled for cover, while German gunners continued firing with deadly efficiency. For the British soldiers on that road, it felt like chaos. Tank radios crackled with urgent voices. Officers tried to understand what was happening. Some crews abandoned damaged vehicles and ran for cover between buildings. Others attempted to turn their tanks around in the narrow streets. Smoke began rising above the town as ammunition cooked off inside destroyed vehicles. But the battle was far from finished. While Wittmann's Tiger caused destruction inside the town, German Panther tanks from the Panzer Lehr division were also moving toward the area. These Panthers were fresh, powerful machines designed to counter Allied armored advances. Their crews expected to face standard Shermans. In their minds, this would likely be another straightforward engagement. They did not know a Firefly was waiting. Back in the hedgerow lane, Sergeant Gordon Hill's crew listened carefully to the growing noise of engines. The sound was getting closer. Hill raised his binoculars just above the hedgerow, careful not to expose too much. Through the narrow gap, he spotted movement on a road across an open field. Panther tanks, 5 of them. They were moving in line, their engines growling as they advanced along the road. Their dark shapes moved slowly between the hedgerows, confident and unaware. Hill lowered his binoculars and gave the order to prepare. Inside the turret, Trooper Joe Ekins adjusted the gun. The long barrel of the 17-pounder pointed toward the narrow opening in the hedgerow. The loader placed an armor-piercing round into the breech with a metallic click. The crew's movements were calm, but every man knew the stakes. If the Panthers spotted them first, the fight would be over instantly. The Firefly remained completely still. Seconds passed. The first Panther came into view. Through the gun sight, Ekins saw the familiar shape clearly now. The Panther's thick frontal armor and long gun barrel were easy to recognize. The German tank moved slowly along the road, unaware that it had entered the perfect kill zone. Hill gave the order. Fire. The 17-pounder roared. The entire Firefly rocked backward from the recoil as the armor-piercing shell shot across the field. The round struck the Panther's side armor with tremendous force. A bright flash burst from the impact point, followed instantly by smoke. Inside the German tank, the shell tore through the fighting compartment. The Panther stopped moving. For a moment, the other German crews hesitated. They had not expected incoming fire from that direction. Before they could react, Hill gave the next order. Reload. The loader slammed another round into the breech. Ekins adjusted the gun slightly. Fire. The second shot flew across the field and struck the next Panther. Again, the powerful 17-pounder punched through the armor. Flames erupted from the tank as ammunition inside began to ignite. 2 Panthers destroyed. The German column suddenly realized they were under attack. One Panther began turning its turret, searching for the hidden British tank. Another attempted to move off the road to find cover, but the hedgerows limited their movement. Inside the Firefly, the crew worked with intense focus. Their training took over. Reload, fire. The third round smashed into another Panther. The impact rocked the German tank violently. Smoke burst from the engine deck as internal damage spread through the vehicle. 3 Panthers knocked out. Now the German crews were desperate. The narrow road trapped them between hedgerows. Their vision was limited. They could not easily identify the firing position. Hill understood the advantage. He ordered the gunner to shift aim again. Reload. Fire. The 4th Panther was hit moments later. The shell penetrated the turret ring, one of the weakest points in the armor. The result was immediate. Flames and smoke poured from the vehicle. 4 Panthers destroyed. The entire engagement had lasted only a few minutes, but there was still one more target. The final Panther attempted to reverse away from the road, trying to escape the invisible attacker. Its engine roared as the driver fought to maneuver the heavy tank. Inside the Firefly, the loader pushed in another round. Ekins took careful aim. Fire. The last shot struck the Panther before it could escape. The shell punched through the armor and detonated inside the fighting compartment. The tank shuddered to a halt. 5 Panthers destroyed. Silence returned to the field. Smoke rose slowly from the burning German tanks, drifting above the hedgerows. The smell of burning fuel filled the air. You can almost imagine the thick black smoke rising into the quiet Normandy sky, while the distant sounds of battle continued somewhere beyond the fields. Inside the Firefly, the British crew finally allowed themselves a moment to breathe. The entire action had taken only minutes, but its impact would be remembered for decades. For a short time after the shooting stopped, the crew remained inside their tank, still alert. In Normandy, victory in one moment did not mean safety in the next. Other German units were still nearby, and the battlefield could change again within seconds. Hill ordered the driver to remain in position while he scanned the fields through his binoculars. The burning Panthers created a grim line of black smoke along the road, marking exactly where the ambush had unfolded. Joe Ekins, the quiet gunner who fired those shots, later described the moment with remarkable calm. To him, it had simply been a matter of doing his job. Spot the target, aim carefully, fire quickly. Yet the results were extraordinary. The Firefly had demonstrated exactly why the 17-pounder gun was so feared by German tank crews. Unlike the standard Sherman gun, it could penetrate Panther armor at long range. In skilled hands, it turned the Firefly into one of the most dangerous Allied tanks on the battlefield. The design of the Firefly itself was the result of hard lessons learned earlier in the war. British engineers realized that the normal Sherman gun struggled against new German armor. By installing the powerful 17-pounder inside the Sherman turret, they created a tank that could finally challenge Panthers and Tigers. The modification required changes inside the turret, including moving the radio and redesigning parts of the gun mount, but the result was worth the effort. In the weeks after the Normandy landings, British armored units increasingly relied on the Firefly to counter German heavy tanks. Normally, each troop of Shermans included only one Firefly among several standard tanks. The Firefly would stay slightly behind the others, waiting for the moment when a Panther or Tiger appeared. When that moment came, the Firefly would step forward and deliver the shot that ordinary Shermans could not. German tank crews soon learned to fear the long barrel of the 17-pounder. Many Panthers began targeting Fireflies first whenever they spotted them. Some crews even tried to identify them quickly by their longer gun barrels and different turret shapes. The events around Villers-Bocage that day continued to unfold with confusion and fierce fighting. Wittmann's Tiger would eventually be disabled inside the town after an intense exchange with British forces. German and British units clashed across the countryside as both sides attempted to control the area. By the afternoon, the battlefield around the town was filled with destroyed vehicles, damaged houses, and scattered equipment. Infantry units moved cautiously through the streets, while tank crews searched for surviving enemies hidden among the hedgerows. The battle for Villers-Bocage was far from a simple victory for either side, but the destruction of those 5 Panthers by a single Firefly remained one of the most remarkable moments of the day. It also showed something important about armored warfare in Normandy. Technology alone did not decide victory. Terrain mattered, position mattered, training mattered, and sometimes a single well-placed tank could change everything. The hedgerows of Normandy turned every field into a maze. Long-range duels were rare. Battles often happened suddenly, at close range, with only seconds to react. In those conditions, the crew who spotted the enemy first usually won. Sergeant Hill's crew had used the terrain perfectly. By hiding behind the hedgerow and waiting patiently, they forced the German Panthers into a narrow kill zone where their armor advantage meant little. The Panthers were powerful machines, but they were not invincible. Across Normandy in the weeks that followed, both sides learned painful lessons about armored combat in this difficult landscape. German tanks struggled with Allied air attacks and limited fuel. Allied tanks faced dangerous German anti-tank guns and well-trained crews. Yet moments like the Firefly ambush reminded soldiers on both sides that confidence could disappear quickly in battle. For German Panther crews who believed their tanks ruled the battlefield, that morning near Villers-Bocage delivered a harsh surprise. And for the British crew inside that Sherman Firefly, it became a story that would live long after the war ended. Even today, historians still study the engagement, not because it was the largest battle of the war, but because it showed how skill, patience, and positioning could overcome even the most feared machines on the battlefield. If you stand in those Normandy fields today, the countryside looks peaceful. The hedgerows are still there, the roads still narrow, the farms quiet and green. But in June 1944, those same fields echoed with the roar of engines and the thunder of tank guns. And somewhere along one of those hedgerows, a single Sherman Firefly waited silently before changing the battle in just a few minutes.
If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.